you've got even a passing interest in birds, could be garden birds, could be birds of prey, just maybe birds that you see every day or when you're out for a walk or whatever. There is a new book about birds specifically in Donegal, and it's called The Birds of County Donegal, the first complete account of the history and status of all 376 birds known to have occurred here in Donegal. And the man behind it is an ecologist who actually lives here in Donegal. He's been monitoring birds here since the 1950s and was a lecturer in ecology at Bristol Polytechnic back in the 70s and an ecological consultant here in Ireland for over 30 years and is the author of Ireland's Wetland Wealth and has contributed chapters to the Atlas of County Donegal and also has served on the councils of Irish Wild Bird Conservancy and Antashka. So I'm delighted that Ralph Sheppard joins us now in the studio for a chat about his new book.
Thank you for having me.
And it is a comprehensive account because 376 birds, and I know you've been studying and watching birds for years, but nonetheless, to actually compile it all into a book form, that's another matter entirely.
Well, it's a kind of a standard format for birds and for plants. It's long been the practice to do a sort of catalogue, you might say an annotated catalogue of everything that occurs in a discrete geographical area. Usually in Britain and Ireland it would be a county. So it's rather odd that this is only the second one that has been produced in Ireland. Cork beat me to it by about a year. I had most of the text written before I discovered that they were just ahead of me.
But it wouldn't have put you off.
No, not at all.
You were too far down the road anyhow. Tell us a little bit about your interest in birds from a young age. And there's am I correct in saying there was three elderly gentlemen who were very influential?
Yeah, they were a contrasting group, but in my teenage years, they were both they were all very helpful to me. One of them was a cathedral organist in Derry, who had a very musical ear, which compensated for the fact that his eyes weren't very good. So he approached birds ear first, and he taught me a lot about bird song.
And his name was?
His name was Michael Franklin. And then the next one was Bill Bigger, and he was an amazing man. He had spent the First World War as a surgeon in Palestine, and he stayed there for the rest of his career before he returned to Ireland, and he had mastered the birds of the Middle East, which is a very complex area ornithologically, without the aid of a field guide, which was remarkable. But he helped me a lot and took me to some of the wonderful places in Donegal that I wouldn't have got to otherwise. And the third one was known by everybody as the Major. He was, again, a First World War soldier, and he basically ran ornithology in Ireland for many decades. And he corresponded with me for many years, and I still have about 150 of his letters. He was an amazing correspondent. If I wrote to him, I got a reply by return of many pages.
Lengthy.
If he wrote to me, he would give me a list of all the jobs that he wanted me to do. But we remained friends to the very end, and he saw 3 centuries.
Wow.
Born in 1899, died in 2001.
Wow. So died at the age of 102.
Yep.
Wow. And you got to go around to some of the best spots in Donegal for bird watching, observe these birds in their natural habitat, and listen to, I presume, great stories. In a couple of cases, great stories, or stories rather, about World War One.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Bill Bigger, he didn't talk so much about the surgery, but he loved the Palestinian people, and that was why he stayed.
Wow. All right, bird habitats and places to see them in Donegal, they're wide and varied, and I suppose we're blessed in this county for, our landscape and our lakes and rivers and wetlands and cliffs and that's why there's such a, or is that is that the main reason why we have such a diversity of birds?
Yeah, coastal counties have the edge on the inland ones because it just increases the diversity of habitats and the number of species that you can have. But Donegal has the edge on most other counties in that it's at the corner of Ireland and indeed the corner of Europe. So we're going to be either the last foothold that something has in Ireland or Europe, or the first foothold that something from the north will have if it comes in our direction.
Okay. And since you started observing birds back in the 50s here, as the situation has got worse for many.
Of course. I mean, when I was a kid, every beach on Inishowen had a colony of terns, common terns, Arctic terns, little terns. They're all gone now. There's none of them left. They were banished, first of all, to the offshore islands, and there they hang on, but the numbers are greatly depleted, obviously.
And in that case, what's at fault? Is it our climate? Because we can't blame intensive farming for that.
No, it's disturbance. They just don't like people walking through their colonies.
Simple as that. So
yeah.
Something to bear in mind the next time we go for a walk in the dunes.
Yeah, exactly.
And the same is true for other species of birds and in different parts of the county.
Oh yeah, I mean there are things that you will notice, and many people will be aware of them, like the arrival from the south of the little egret. You know, the beautiful white heron that now graces our estuaries. That has been brought north by climate change, but equally other species of northern birds, like snowbuntings in winter time that come down from the Arctic. They are getting fewer in number because they're retreating to the north. So you have a balance between what's coming in and what's going out, and that balance ought to be equal. Yes. If everything was stable as it should be. But it's not equal. We're losing more than we're gaining. I mean, there are things that you don't notice, like, for example, it's long been assumed that the commonest bird in Ireland is the chaffinch. In the 1970s, I used to tour around the countryside in a car during winter to look for flocks of chaffinches, to see what other rare finches like brambling would be hidden among the flocks. Mm. Well, there aren't any flocks of chaffinches now in the winter. It's still a common bird, but you don't see them in flocks. All that food that they would have had in arable fields, in potato fields, or in the stubble of grain fields, there ain't any left now. Agriculture is so efficient that they leave nothing for the birds.
Okay, so it's not one problem. It's a combination of things. We've talked about just touched on there, intensive farming, climate change, disturbance.
Yeah. They're all involved. It's coming at them from every quarter.
And a small, a small animal like this, unfortunately, bears the brunt. So, in all, first of all, the book it's a sizable book, and it goes into great detail, and there's even grid references for over 290 different locations, and what you do, there's illustrations and there's photographs of all the birds. Do you have a favourite, or is it just if you come on one that's quite rare or very scarce? Is that like your favourite in the moment?
Well, certainly that would be the case. The favourite of the moment is the bird that's in front of you. But I have some what you might call long-term favourites. A bird like the swift, which has such an extraordinary lifestyle that you can't help but fall in love with it. I mean, swifts are small birds like swallows. They seem to live the same life as swallows, catching insects in the air. The difference being that when a swift leaves its nest as a young bird, it doesn't land until it's an adult 2 years later. To breed.
That's the only reason. Everything else on the wing.
On the wing, food, sleep, mating, all done on the wing.
Wow. I can understand why that would pique your interest and be so fascinating. There is, when you go out now to watch birds, you still get a joy from it. I take it, and
absolutely,
yeah. And Donegal is still as good a place as any in Ireland.
Oh, it is, of course. There are things that you will get in South Coast counties that you won't get here. But, we have as I said before, we have our specialities. Migrants that come at us from the north in particular would be where we have the edge. So in autumn, we expect to get vagrant birds dropping in places like Torrey, from as far afield as Siberia or Arctic Canada. And in the winter time, we have the geese and the swans and the wildfowl that come at us from northern Europe, Scandinavia and northern Russia. So, you can't beat that. Thousands and thousands of geese and swans.
It's a bit like nature, I suppose. If we know the stories behind various trees and plants, we're more likely to have an interest in them when we're out and about. Same applies to birds. I mean, if they're a visitor, where they're likely to have come from, how far away, what their journey would entail, how long they're going to be here for, what they normally feed on, how tough they have it. And if we see a bird, and we know a little bit about them, and we're able to name them, then it brings us closer to nature.
It does indeed, and that's what I try to do in the book. I try to give the background for each species, something that will fill in the answers to the questions you've just been asking, so that people will know in what way the life of a ring ouzel is different from that of a blackbird, its closest cousin. And of course, having accumulated all that information for each species, the chapters at the beginning of the book, I analyse all that in various ways, by habitat, by locations, and looking into the future.
Okay, well, let's hope that that future for birds here in Donegal and around the country improves. And in the meantime, it is something of a Bible for bird lovers. It's called the Birds of County Donegal. Ralph Sheppard, thank you very much for coming in and having a chat with us.